Hey everybody, it is Sir Willow, and there's been a lot of talk about whether Star Wars Galaxy's Edge is a success or a huge failure. Let's talk about that a little bit. Well, I am on the road, so no flashy intro like I usually would have or anything like that, but I've had a number of people asking me, is Star Wars Galaxy's Edge a big flop and a failure? Has it gone big time in the tub? And okay, I'll give you the short answer real quick first, and then we'll talk about it in expanded form. Short answer is, it's too soon to tell. You really don't know, and I know there's a lot of people jumping to conclusions because the lines are short, there aren't a lot of crowds at Disneyland, and what's going on. Well, there's a number of things that are contributing to this, and that's why I say wait and see. What's actually happened is Disneyland back in 2015, they started putting in a tier pricing system where certain times of the year, like summer and Christmas, tickets cost a lot more than other times. For example, a one-day ticket to Disneyland in the summer right now for an adult is $154. $154. That's a lot of money. If you wait until September, that price goes down by $20 a day. If you wait until certain other times off season, like January, it's actually going to go down by $40 to $50 a day. I mean, you can get combo tickets, and it does go down some. A 2-day park hopper, for example, is going to run you $280, which is still $140 a day. But people are looking at that price, and they're going, whoa, Disneyland has actually got themselves to a point now where the last couple years, 2017, 2018, people have actually been talking about how summer is now the off season at Disneyland because it's so much more expensive. And it's not just park tickets. The hotels raise their rates. The convention center, which is right by Disneyland, will do a lot of conventions that time, so they charge more. So everything is more expensive to go there in the summer. So they don't get as many people. I had several people tell me last year that the park in summer actually felt like what it used to in January, February, stuff like that, that it was very small crowds, very short waits, and they felt like they were there in the middle of winter. So that's been going on for a while. Then you add on, they've had a few other things happen as well. For example, the annual passes, most of them are blocked right now. They have their signature passes, which are their upper end, their more expensive ones. Those can get in. The flex passes, you have to make a reservation. And if you haven't arranged ahead of time to get in with a reservation, you're not going to get in with that. But then the Southern California seasonal pass and the other regular passes, those are all blocked until the end of August or September, depending upon the pass type. So all of your locals, which tend to buy the cheaper passes, they can't get in anyways. So you've got that going on. So a lot of people missing there. Plus, the other thing that happens in Southern California is there is so much other stuff to do that Disney actually ends up competing with Knott's Berry Farm, Universal Studios, which just opened up the Jurassic Park ride, and also a lot of local events. The Orange County Fair, for example, is running, I believe it just started or is about to start. That pulls people away from Disneyland because it's only there for a couple times, and the Orange County Fair is an awesome fair. I've only been to like a couple fairs that can top it, and it's a great fair. A lot of locals are going to go to that and to some of the other events there because that's what they do. One thing when we lived in Southern California, at the time, for us, summer was not when we wanted to go to Disneyland. And not just because the crowds, it didn't have tier pricing at that time, but we would actually pull our kids out of school as teachers. A lot of locals do this. You're prepared for it because it's a great time to go to avoid the crowds, go cheaper, get nicer weather. And so a number of the locals have a system down where they're not afraid to go during the off season, which is now the on season because of the ticket pricing. And so locals kind of work their schedules around that. We were far from alone. So you've got the ticket pricing that's really hindering and has changed when people go. You've got all the local stuff that competes. But then Disneyland also did a thing that majorly shot themselves in the foot. And that's their advertising campaign that they had for Star Wars. One of the things that they did was they made this huge huge hoopla deal that if you wanted to get into Star Wars, you had to have a reservation, which makes sense because huge crowds were expected. The problem is what got lost in the translation is that the parks themselves were still open, and the only thing you needed was the reservation for Star Wars. And people saw that, and then the expectation that there was going to be huge crowds, and they kind of said, no, thank you. I've actually talked to family members who live in Southern California, some who may actually meet us here in October. And in talking with a couple family and friends out there, their question was, but wait, I thought you now had to have a reservation to go to Disneyland. Not realizing the reservation was only for Star Wars. And I actually had to explain, no, really, the reservation's only for Star Wars. The parks themselves are still open for whoever wants to show up and come. And mine are not the only one I've heard about this from. I've heard from several people who've talked to other family members and friends and whatever, and a lot of confusion that people think that the park is only open if you have a reservation. That all the parks, both Disneyland and California Adventure, and if you don't have a reservation, you can't go. And besides, there's 1 million people there because of Star Wars. Disney has really, they've taken a time that they had brought in lower crowds anyways, and because of the advertising campaign, the message got misunderstood by a lot of people. Now, there's those of us theme park nuts who constantly are watching stuff, and we make sure we get all the small details, and we're not confused, but we're also not the vast majority of people that have a 5-second attention span when it comes to information like this. And all they hear is, you need a reservation to get in. Well, I don't want to make a reservation to get into Disneyland. It's going to be hugely crowded, apparently, because of Star Wars, and I don't want to mess with that, and I don't want to pay that ridiculous extreme price on the hotel and the tickets, and so they've put their vacations off. So you probably have a lot of people that are looking at coming in the fall or even next spring because of all that. And then you end up with something like the Rise of the Resistance. Now, I don't know how much this is actually affecting crowds because, again, I don't think the vast majority of people realize that there's still another huge attraction that hasn't opened yet. I don't think they've caught up on that just because they've mixed up the other signals. But the big ride, Rise of Resistance, isn't going to open until January at Disneyland, which I'm really personally kind of ticked off about because it was supposed to open up in September, and I'm going in the first part of October and thought I was going to catch it, and now I can't because they messed up, and okay, yeah, that's my rant. We have no idea why it's not opening, but it's not, and so they've actually ended up hindering the land that way as well. But a huge amount of this actually lays upon the ticket pricing and upon their advertising campaign. And yes, there's a little bit of a panic that's going on in headquarters, I'm sure. Where's the crowds? We thought we'd get big crowds coming in. They're not coming in. Why not? Well, look at the advertising and the pricing and the message that you were sending out. And people want to come in and experience something new. Even if they understood that the park was open, hey, if I'm going to Disneyland, I want to go into Star Wars. And if it's so crowded, I've got to have a reservation. That kind of eliminates a big deal because I don't know if I can get a reservation. And I won't know till I get there if I can get a reservation. And if that's the reason I'm going and I can't get in, well, then I've kind of wasted my trip. And I don't want to waste a trip. So why should I start in the first place if I don't know for sure I can get in? Also, word is not out so much among the locals and the people who travel that the crowds are light. Now, us who are obsessed with the park and we're constantly fascinated with what's going on, we know, but I don't know that most people out there realize that the crowds are light. And so again, this is one of those deals where Disney kind of needs to get a message out and they're not doing it effectively. So all of those things combined right now has it as a hold. Is the land a flop? I don't think so, but I think that the management of the whole advertising campaign and the opening, I think that was a major flop and a screw up, and the executives in charge of that ought to be smacking themselves around. But as far as the land being a flop, I really think we need to wait. Let's wait and see what happens come September when the passes are suddenly opened up and all the locals can get in and they're not competing with other events. Let's wait until October and November when people will be planning their vacations again. Let's see what happens at Christmas when they get the huge crowds and how much of a crowd is coming out for that. And then come next spring, once all the misinformation and everything has leveled out, I think we're going to see a different story then. Um, I know there's people saying, "Oh, it's the movie franchise and all this." Come on. If you don't like Star Wars, fine, but that's not what it is. It's been some missteps there. I think that Star Wars opening up at Hollywood Studios in Florida come end of August is also going to it's going to be a better indicator on if the land is a failure or a success, and how many people are coming out to that. They haven't been talking about closures or needing reservations or anything there. So people aren't expecting to get stuck not being able to get into Star Wars there. And I think that's going to see a much, much bigger turnout and a bigger crowd among the people who don't obsess over parks like us. So I think that's going to be a better test. So let's see how it does in Florida. Let's see how their crowds are. And then let's wait and see when the passes and everything open up and people can get in. So is it a failure? Let's wait and see. Let's not jump to conclusions until there's a lot more evidence. People love to, as soon as something happens, immediately jump on and think they know everything, and you don't have all the information, the full picture yet. I have a feeling long run Star Wars is going to be very, very successful for the Disney parks. It just got off to a bad start because of a couple real bad decisions on the part of Disney that have kept the crowds away. Not the land, the advertising and pricing. I think that's the issue. So what do you think? I would love to hear. Share it in the comments below. Please don't forget to, even if you disagree, I would love to hear it. I'd love to hear your opinions and stuff like that. And stuff like that. Yeah, stuff like that. Share me your stuff like that. So don't forget to hit like and share. If I know there's a lot of videos that they're talking about right now. My opinion is probably a little different than a lot of them. But hey, share it out there. I'd love to have other people seeing, and let's get some conversation going. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit the sub button. I want to give a shout out to my patrons for supporting me. If you want to know more about Patreon and supporting me, about merchandise like shirts and collector's pins and stuff like that, as well as my fan sites, there's a ton of information in the description. Check that out down there. Thank you so very much for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for feedback and comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much, and God bless.